What's up, everybody? We are live here on YouTube. I thought I'd go live today. You know, feeling like today's the day. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to the Longevity Game podcast. I'm your host, Michael Ward, nurse practitioner, founder of Next Level TRT. We're a longevity and performance medicine practice right in South Fort Worth. And as always, here at the Longevity Game, our mission is simple, right? To help you live longer, perform better, and maximize both lifespan and health span. And so every week we bring to you the latest developments in longevity medicine, performance medicine, hormone optimization, weight loss therapy, peptides, and emerging technologies that may fundamentally change how we age, right? And so this week is packed with fascinating developments. Okay, so I hope you guys bring a pen and a piece of paper if you don't have one, or maybe, jot down some things on your phone or whatever. There's going to be some really cool things we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to discuss is the first human reverse aging trial is now underway. And so that's really exciting. Also, we're going to talk about a new biological age clock that may better predict mortality than any previous clock, right? We're also going to discuss Retatrutide and its continued dominance in obesity medicine. And speaking of GLP-1s, we're going to talk about how some GLP-1 patients may be sabotaging their own results. We're also going to discuss new developments involving mitochondrial peptides, and then a major Harvard-backed study involving more than 150,000 people that may have identified the longevity sweet spot for strength training, like how long you must, to see a benefit in longevity. And it's not what you think. It's really going to blow you away. You're not going to believe it, but it's cool, and we'll talk about it. And so if you're looking for one practical takeaway from today's episode, it is going to be this. The future of longevity may involve cellular reprogramming. Maybe it'll involve artificial intelligence, right? Maybe advanced diagnostics for sure, and powerful therapeutics. But the foundation of longevity medicine is really very surprisingly simple. Build and maintain muscle. All right. That's it. Let me say it again for the guys in the back. Build and maintain muscle. All right. So let's dive in. It's good to be back, guys. I hope you are doing well. We're going to have fun. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. So let's get into it. So the first human reverse aging trial has begun. Have you guys heard this? I mean, I get updates on this stuff all the time in my emails. So if you're not following this is a very big deal, right? So for decades, longevity science has focused primarily on slowing aging, right? Well, researchers have, attempted to reduce inflammation. They've attempted to, improve mitochondrial function, which is important. We'll talk about that. They've tried to optimize metabolism, reduce cardiovascular risk. But now something really, really cool, something truly remarkable is happening. Scientists have officially begun the first human trial involving cellular reprogramming. And they're using technologies that was inspired by the work of this Nobel-winning prize scientist and researcher, Shinya Yamanaka. And we've talked about that in the past whenever we went over Yamanaka factors. And so they're using a little bit of this technology. And so if you've listened to previous episodes, you've heard me talk about these Yamanaka factors. So these are proteins that are capable of partially resetting the biological age of cells. Okay. And in laboratory settings, in animal models, researchers have demonstrated some pretty cool things. Improved tissue regeneration, restoration of damaged cells, reversal of age-related cellular markers, and perhaps most excitingly, they've been able to restore visual function in aging animal models. And so they've decided, maybe we should try this on humans, right? So for the first time, researchers are testing all these concepts on humans, right? And so the initial target is going to be age-related eye disease, right? And I've heard that the reason they chose the eye is because it's relatively, separated from everything else. And it's just, it's just an easier It's an easier thing to dive into first to see if we can see some big changes. And then from there, they'll test other things out, right? And let's be honest, right? Nobody's going to spend millions of dollars simply to improve vision. You know what I mean? But the bigger question is whether aging itself can eventually become a treatable biological process, right? How cool is that? This is one of those moments like in the future generations, they look back and identify as the beginning of a new era in medicine, so it's really, really cool. For the first time, we may be transitioning from slowing aging to potentially reversing aspects of biological aging. And so we'll get into that. And I'm curious, like, is this a thing? Like, is this something that we're excited about? Are you excited about that? Drop me a comment because I'm curious. What if we could reverse age? What if we could reverse our age, reprogram ourselves to be younger and just heal up everything? And then we could just live healthily for long term, for a long time, Is that a good thing? Yeah, it's curious, right? Because I mean, population control would be an issue, right? I don't know. I mean, I think, wow, it'd be cool to live a whole bunch more, 100 years, 150 years. I mean, I have a lot of goals. There's a lot of things that I want to learn. If I knew that I had the time, man, I'd go back to school and I would get my PhD in several things. If I knew that I had the health and the lifespan to do it, and I would probably do a lot more things. And so it's I don't know, it's pretty cool, pretty cool. But in I but I'm curious as to what you think about this. Drop me a comment. If you think aging longer and living longer is good, let me know what your thoughts are. If you think it's bad, tell me why you think it's bad. I'm really, really curious. Speaking of biological age, we're going to stay on the topic of aging for a second, okay, before we move into those other things. But another fascinating development involves biological age testing. And so, a newer molecular clock developed by longevity researchers is generating significant attention because it may outperform previous aging clocks in predicting mortality, right? And so we've talked about epigenetic clocks and biological clocks. And so if you haven't seen any of those episodes, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. If you're 50 years old, you're 50 years old, right? Simple, right? But we all know that that's not the whole story. There's a lot of people, some 50-year-olds look and function like 35-year-olds. I'd like to think that that's me, you know. I mean, I'm almost 50. I feel amazing. I work out all the time. I go out and run and jump with the kids just like I would, at a younger age. And, I feel like that's me, right? When I look at my biological age, I'm very happy to see it, right? But there's other people, my gosh, they look like 70-year-olds and they're 50, right? You guys remember? I'm really showing my age now. Do you remember the movie Cocoon? Cocoon was it was a cool movie, right? There was there was aliens involved, right? But these guys, there was some older adults. I thought they were old because I was young when the movie came out. Do you guys remember Wilford Brimley? He was like the sugar diabetes guy, you know. He was in that movie. And in that movie, he was 40, like his real age was 49. The dude he looked like he was in his 60s. Like he looked rough, right? He looked rough. And I think back, like I look back in the 80s and the 90s and actors that are my age now, they look much older than when I feel that I look for my age. And so it's pretty interesting, right? Anyway, this is where biological age enters the conversation, right? So biological age attempts to quantify how quickly your body is aging, basically. And this is the one reason I believe biological age testing will become like increasingly important over time. At Next Level TRT, we already have begun incorporating biological age assessments through Rhythm Health. They're a monthly lab platform. And, anybody can take advantage of Rhythm Health. You can find them online, rhythmhealth.com. And you can have your blood collected and I'm not getting paid to talk about Rhythm Health right now. Okay. But I use it. And so You just attach the little thing to your shoulder, it collects your blood, you send it in, and then within a couple days, you got your results, and it includes, like, a whole lab panel and even your biological age. Anyway, I believe this is where medicine's heading, you know? I believe that, patients will increasingly ask, "How old am I biologically?" Instead of, "How old am I chronologically?" Or, I don't know, and that's a much more useful question, right? Because aging speed is something that we eventually will be able to modify. So anyway, that's cool. If you've used a biological age clock or also known as epigenetic clocks, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you've used them. If you have, does it correspond with how you feel, or maybe how you look, and does it working for you? Are you tracking it? And if so, like which ones are you using? I'm curious. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about Retatrutide. You guys know what Retatrutide is? Holy moly, this is amazing. This is probably the best thing for weight loss that I've ever seen, ever. And, it continues to impress, right? So, we've discussed this medication before, right? But new data continues to reinforce the potential that it carries with it. Average weight reductions are approaching 28.7%, which is incredible. If you think about that for a moment, a 250-pound individual could potentially lose 70 pounds, right? In the same amount of time, a bariatric surgery patient could lose, 70 pounds. Because bariatric surgery in the same amount of time, it's like 30. So you're right there without the surgery. Okay. And so researchers are also reporting improvements in lots of things like sleep apnea, blood sugar control, knee osteoarthritis symptoms, metabolic health, and this is why many obesity researchers believe retatrutide may eventually become the most powerful obesity medication ever developed, which I believe that I've seen it personally, and I believe that it is. I really do. You know, Semaglutide, when it first came out, it was the most incredible medication for weight loss because nobody had ever seen the kind of weight loss that were people were achieving while on semaglutide. And semaglutide opened one metabolic pathway, the GLP-1 pathway. And then tirzepatide came, and tirzepatide opened up a second metabolic pathway called the GIP pathway. And then retatrutide comes on the scene and it adds a third, the glucagon receptors, right? And so this triple agonist approach appears capable of producing outcomes, like I said, approaching bariatric surgery outcomes, which is phenomenal. Imagine the same results, no surgery, right? No recovery, no downtime, and the cost. I mean, what you got to pay for bariatric surgery, out of pocket. There's not a maybe sometimes insurance covers it. If you're, morbidly obese and you have, second, all these, comorbidities, maybe. But I mean, retatrutide, it's not going to be near as expensive as that, right? And so anyway, the question becomes like, are we witnessing the beginning of the end of bariatric surgery as we know it? I have a lot of friends who do bariatric surgery, and I don't know if they're shaking in their boots or not. I haven't really asked, but I mean, this could really, really change the game, you know, and so that's pretty wild. Speaking of GLP-1s, let's talk about a problem that nobody's really talking about. And it's a little bit of a twist, right? Because you see some great outcomes. You know, I actually have people that are chatting with me, but I don't know how to access the chat. I wish I had somebody like, Theo Vaughn or whatever, who's like, hey, so what's the, I don't have anybody to help me with this. So I apologize. I'll try once we finish up, I will handle your comments. So thank you for being patient with me. So anyway, new research presented recently found that many patients become less physically active after starting GLP-1 medications like semaglutide or tirzepatide or retatrutide. Researchers observed reductions in daily step counts, moderate physical activity, overall movement, right? And this is something I suspected clinically for some time. I see this, you know, sometimes with patients that I treat. And, yeah, I mean, if you don't do those things, then it's not going to go well for you. And I'll tell you why in a minute. many patients begin feeling better, right? And then their appetite decreases, right? The scale starts moving in the right direction, and that's exciting. Then they unconsciously assume the medication is doing all the work. And so the danger is that weight loss and health are not necessarily identical, all right? If you lose muscle mass, if you lose strength, your cardiorespiratory fitness, bone density, my gosh, then we've potentially created a new problem, right? I mean, if you lose weight, but part of that weight is muscle, or a lot of that weight is muscle, that's not a win. That is not a win. This is why every GLP-1 conversation should include the following things: protein prioritization, resistance training, cardiovascular fitness, right? Body composition changes. I mean, I would monitor that stuff. We have a body composition analysis machine at our office. We're actually getting a DEXA scan here pretty soon. It's going to be about 90 days, and we'll be doing DEXAs on everybody. But until then, we use an body composition machine that helps to trend body composition as people lose weight. And so that's important. Weight loss is not the goal. Healthy weight loss is the goal, right? That's a huge difference. And so, yeah, yeah. So if you are on a GLP-1 medication, and chances are some of you are, then it's really, really important to really take these things into account. With every patient that I see in my clinic, and we're having the weight loss discussion, and we're moving toward, some type of GLP-1 medication. I said, there's four things you got to do. And if you're not doing them, I'm going to take you off the medication, because you're not going to have great results. And then you will potentially we'll be creating a problem. So these four things are: you have to drink adequate amounts of water, right? And I say shoot for at least 2 to 3 liters a day of water. Whenever the hunger drive goes away, the thirst drive also goes away. You can become dehydrated, which can lead to constipation, right? The next thing is, prioritize your protein. You got to give yourself the building blocks so that you can preserve or build muscle. You need those amino acids that are going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and build that muscle. When you do the third thing, which is resistance training, you have to do some resistance training, some form. You don't have to brutalize yourself, just lift a little weights. It can be body weight exercises. And if you go to ChatGPT, you can say, create for me an at-home body weight exercise regimen that takes 20 minutes of my day, 3 to 4 days a week. And it'll spit out some good stuff, and just do those things. And it can help to preserve or even build muscle, right? The third thing is I'm sorry, that was a third thing, the strength training. The fourth thing is micronutrient supplementation. You got to get your nutrients. If you're not eating enough food, you're not going to get enough of those micronutrients that you need. And I see this a lot of the times. Like when I was in the ICU, I was working as an APRN, ICU intensivist. That's what the title of the job was, APRN intensivist. I would see bariatric surgery patients sometimes come in, and they're in bad shape, because their stomach's this small, and it's just not enough. You just can't cram enough food down there, and because of it, they start having issues. They start losing hair. My gosh, they're not getting the micronutrients they need. They start having skin issues, dry skin. I mean, some of the top three micronutrient deficiencies we see is iron. We see low iron, we see low vitamin B12, and we see low vitamin D. All three of those things can actually make you feel exhausted if you're deficient in those. And you have to supplement. You got to take and just find a good multivitamin. I'm not talking about a Centrum or a one a day. Okay. Those, I've seen some stuff that would make you throw that stuff in the trash, right? Find a good quality, third party tested multivitamin, and I have several in mind, and but I'll have you do your due diligence. Find a good one, and you'll have much better results if you do those four things. And I have this conversation, I don't know how many times a day in the clinic, and it's super important. Those things right there, you'll have a much better outcome if you'll do those 4 things. And the people that are having bad outcomes, they're not doing those things. I promise. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit to mitochondrial medicine, right? Or mitochondrial peptides, and we'll talk about those briefly. I've talked about mitochondrial peptides like a lot, and so you can actually, if you'll scroll through the Longevity Game podcast episodes, you'll see a couple of those where we talk about like MOTC and SS31, and I'll mention those again here in a second. But those are great for improving the efficiency of your mitochondria. And so, anyway, most of the exciting areas in longevity science involve mitochondrial medicine, right? And so mitochondria are often called, if you remember in school, the powerhouse of the cells, right? And as mitochondrial function declines, aging accelerates. Now, do you see the importance of improving mitochondrial efficiency? It's that important. It's that important. As your mitochondria become more inefficient over time with aging, energy production falls, inflammation rises, recovery worsens, metabolic flexibility decreases, and it just doesn't go well. There's lots of things that you can do to improve the efficiency of your mitochondria. But mitochondrial peptides are a good choice, like MOTC. Another one is humanin. Another one is, like I said, SS31, also known as elimipritide. And so there's one recent paper that demonstrated improvements in muscle mitochondrial efficiency through pathways involving AMPK, which is adenine monophosphate activated protein kinase, and PGC1 alpha, also known as peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma coactivator 1 alpha. My gosh, that's a mouthful. Anyway, if those terms sound familiar, they should, because they're some of the same pathways that are activated by exercise. And so this raises an interesting question. What if future therapies could amplify some of those same biological signals triggered by physical activity, like an exercise mimetic? And we have some, MODC has been shown to activate AMPK and actually help to improve mitochondrial efficiency. It's been shown to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the creation of new mitochondria, and helps to with mitophagy, which is the getting rid of all those old janky mitochondria, right? And so, but human data is really limited on that, and so we don't have a whole bunch of human data on that stuff. But from the data that I have seen, it's those peptides are pretty solid. All right. Anyway, but mitochondrial medicine, it's one of those areas of longevity that longevity enthusiasts should really be monitoring or watching really closely, because, they're working on some things, and so be on the lookout. Okay. So one of my favorite things is strength training, right? I love to lift weights. It's therapeutic for me. I try to get people to get to that point in the gym, because there's a lot of people that come into the clinic and they don't work out, right? They don't, it's not something they've ever done, or maybe they tried, but then they didn't have a good experience. And so they decided it's not for me. And this happens to a lot of people, right? If you think about like, what is, and then January 1st, right? Everybody's like, I'm going to work out every day, and so they go to the gym and it's packed. You go in the first week, you can't find a piece of equipment, right? Because everybody's on it. Just give it a week or two, right? Because after about 2 weeks, people trail off and they decide, this just isn't for me. Can't do it. My thing is, start slow. If you're going from the couch to the gym for the first time, don't overdo it. Start really, really slow and use super light weight, because even the lightest weight, if you work out, you're going to feel it the next day. So the more weight you add, the more you're going to feel it the next day. And if this is new to you, you might decide that, my God, I don't like feeling like this all the time. I'm exhausted, And so again, you don't have to brutalize yourself. Just pick 2 days a week or 3 days a week to start. If you get 4 days a week or 5 days a week, those 2 days are bonus, right? But just start 2 or 3 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes, light weight, and just do that for a month, right? Give yourself a month at 2 to 3 days a week, 30 to 45 minutes, lightweight, just getting your body used to having weight on it, right? Just to get used to the machines, just to figure it out. Don't stress yourself out about it, right? Just take your time. And then there will come a time where you've gotten so used to going to the gym 2 to 3 days a week that the days that you don't go, your days just feels off. You know what I mean? And whenever that happens, then you can really, really turn up the intensity because at that point you're a gym goer, and so now you can completely brutalize yourself at that point, and you know it's just going to be you're just going to get better and stronger, and it won't stress you out. As a matter of fact, you may find, like I do, that the gym is therapeutic, and you find that it really helps relieve stress and all those other good things. Let me see. I see a little chat box right here. Yes. Let's see what this is. What's up, man? Let's live to 200. Yes. Yes. Hey, that'd be cool. That would be cool. Thanks for the comment. So anyway, let's discuss what may be the most practical and actionable topic of today's episode. All right, this is something that I think is going to really surprise you. So a recent analysis highlighted findings from a Harvard-backed study involving more than 150,000 people that were followed for guess how long? 30 years. All right. So the researchers wanted to answer a deceptively simple question. How much resistance training is required to maximize longevity? And so how long, like how much working out a week do you think that it takes to maximize longevity? This is going to blow you away. All right. The answer is crazy. So the greatest reductions in mortality occurred among individuals performing approximately 30 to 60 minutes of resistance training. Get this, per week. Per week. Is that wild? 30 to 60 minutes of training per week will help improve longevity or hang on, I'm sorry. It will help to maximize longevity. That's what I meant to say. That's wild. Think about that. While I take a drink of my water, just think about that. My gosh. Most people dramatically overestimate how much exercise is necessary to improve health, right? The greatest benefits occurred among individuals doing relatively modest amounts of resistance training consistently, right? I I try to tell people if you'll walk for 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week, right? That's 15, 30, 45, 60. That's 60 minutes right there. If you'll do 15 minutes a day for 4 days a week of just walking, you will be dramatically farther from where you would be on a path if you chose to do nothing at all over the next year. You follow me? You know what I'm saying? If you chose, let's just say that you decide that I'm not going to do anything for the next year for my health. I'm not going to do any walking. And then in another universe, in the multiverse, you are going to do 15 minutes, 4 days a week of walking. After a year, you wouldn't even look like the same person. You wouldn't feel like the same person. And compound that over 5 years or 10 years. It's huge, guys. 60 minutes, right? Now, let's clarify something that's really important. All right. So this does not mean more training is harmful. Okay. It simply means that the longevity benefits appear to plateau, right? And so the difference between 0 and 30 minutes is enormous, right? The difference between 30 minutes and 60 minutes is meaningful. Okay, so the difference between 60 minutes and 6 hours a week may be much smaller from a lifespan perspective, but lifespan and performance is not the same thing, right? So if you're really trying to improve cardiovascular health and you're really trying to pack on some muscle, 60 minutes a week isn't going to do it, right? But if you will commit to at least 30 to 60 minutes a week of some form of exercise divided in daily increments, you're going to feel way better. long term. Okay. Does that make sense? One of the biggest misconceptions as far as weight training goes and muscle development is that muscle is cosmetic, you know? And I mean, I have to say, and I've said it before, I mean, muscle does make you look damn good. Having more muscle looks good, you know, but nothing is further from the truth. It's way more than cosmetic, right? That's just the cherry on top, right? Muscle is increasingly recognized as a longevity organ, right? It influences lots of things like blood sugar regulation, inflammation, immune function, metabolism, physical independence, brain health. As we age, muscle, it naturally declines. After your 40s, man, you're losing a lot of muscle every decade. Like, you're losing 1 to 2 to 3% per year. And that equals up to be a significant amount of muscle per decade. And so this process is called sarcopenia, by the way, age related muscle decline. And the consequences are enormous. They're enormous. Loss of muscle. It increases your risk of all kinds of things like falls and fractures and frailty. Hospitalization, loss of independence, which is super important, in death, right? I said it before, and I believe it every year more strongly. Many people don't die because they get old. Many people die because they're too weak to survive getting old, right? And so strength represents resilience. It represents reserve capacity. It's your insurance against aging, right? Muscle is important, super important. And so, if you think about strength training, it directly influences many of the hallmarks of aging. Like I said, it improves the way your body handles glucose. So it improves insulin sensitivity, right? It enhances your mitochondrial function. If you want to enhance your mitochondria, work out, lift weights, build muscle, right? It also preserves bone mineral density. Women, pay attention. After menopause, when you're not making estrogen anymore, your bone mineral density declines, right? Estrogen is super, super important. And whenever you're not making it, your bone mineral density will decline. You'll develop osteopenia, which will progress to osteoporosis, which increases your risk of fractures. And that's no good. I think this I saw in a study that 20% of people s- who who suffer a hip fracture, 20% die within the first year. That's awful. But I mean, it's bad because most people at that age can't take care of themselves. They probably don't have, somebody living in the home with them that can help them, recover. And so they have to live in, long-term care centers and it just doesn't go well, And so build muscle so you can stay alive, right? It improves metabolic flexibility. It improves your inflammation or reduces your inflammation, right? It supports healthy hormone production. And perhaps most importantly, it preserves function. You can have perfect lab work. My gosh, you can take supplements. You can optimize your hormones. You can wear every wearable on the market, but if you lose the ability to move independently and you lost the most important thing that contributes to healthy aging, right? Anyway, well, guys, that about wraps up this episode. I Just some final thoughts. As exciting as longevity medicine has become, and it is exciting, today's episode highlights really, an important truth. The future of longevity medicine may include, as I mentioned, cellular reprogramming, mitochondrial peptides, AI, advanced diagnostics, biological age testing, all those things, powerful new obesity medications. But really, none of those replace the fundamentals, right? Lift weights, friends, build muscle, improve your cardiovascular fitness, eat sufficient protein. That's really important. And what is it? Like 6 ounces of chicken breast is like 52 grams of protein. That's awesome. Eat 3 of those a day, man. You've done it. Anyway, you also want to monitor your health. Remain physically capable. The goal isn't just adding years to your life, it's adding life to your years, right? And so if you could choose one anti-aging intervention beyond avoiding smoking, of course, then maybe resistance training should be at the top of your list. The goal is not to become the strongest person in the gym, right? The goal is to become the strongest version of yourself that exists at age 80. You know what I'm saying? And that's the longevity game. Thank you for listening to the Longevity Game podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure, please, to subscribe. Leave a review. I really appreciate those. And share this episode with someone who you care about and you want them to live longer and feel better and perform at their highest level across their age span, their health span, their lifespan. Until next time, keep leveling up your longevity. And I will see you next time. Come on. Stop it. Stop it. All right, guys. This is Michael Ward, and I really appreciate you guys being here today. If you want to be a guest on the Longevity Game podcast, maybe we can sync our schedules and we can make it happen. I'd love to have you. Just email me at beaguest@thelongevitygamepodcast.com. And that is it, friends. I hope that you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will see you next time. Take care.